Good afternoon. How are you? I always like to greet you very exuberantly, but these days we're not exuberant. We are remembering those who are in the path of danger this very moment and will continue to be until you and I meet again on Monday. So we want to remember those and pray for those who are in the path of Hurricane Florence. So let's move to the program today. And hello, thank you for joining us. How can we move beyond catastrophic loss? Dee Lundgren shares her loss and Christ's healing touch. She's also going to tell us 6 steps that she's taking right now to build her author platform that you can also take. Hi, I'm Patricia Durgan, the Christian Message Coach, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing tutorials and interviews to help Christian writers and speakers take their message online, because that's where your audience is. This is episode number 130, 6 ways beginners can start building their platform with Dee Lundgren. Hello, Dee. How are you today?
Hey, Patricia. I'm doing good.
It's so good to see you. We've already got a comment. Janice Hall Heck is here. Hey, she says, hey, Dee.
Hello there.
And Cindy Reynolds is here. She's an author as well, down Georgia way, down on my side of town. You love the Bruce Wilkerson book, The Prayer of Jabez, Dee.
I do.
Why do you love it so, and how are you using it? How are you applying it to your work right now?
Well, I actually have several copies. I just gave one away yesterday, but I have more in my stash. But it's basically a little prayer found in 1 Chronicles 4:9, where Jabez asked for more territory. And in his case, it was land. And so, I'm sitting in my little counseling office and doing counseling, which I love, but I felt like God wanted me to ask for more. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been asking for more. And you know what? He does answer that prayer. But with more comes, and so the more came with, what else do you want me to do? How can I reach more people? And the thought came to me, writing and speaking.
Mm-hmm. And you're a pastor's wife, so that's communication is not unfamiliar territory to you, is it?
No, it isn't. No, I've been talking for a long time. That I do well.
And yet you have a good life, you have a family, everybody's doing well, and yet it wasn't always that way. 10 years ago this month, something tragic happened, and you experienced your own catastrophic loss. Tell us about it, please.
Well, of all places, I was at the American Association of Christian Counselors in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Opryland Hotel. So this is therapist heaven. We go there, we need continuing education credits. So we go there, we're there for 4 days. So I go to the conference and, there's 7,000 people, 7,000 Christian counselors. So right before Max Lucado was the first plenary speaker, was about to speak, I thought, well, I better call home, just check on how everyone's doing. And so I call home, call my husband on his cell, and he begins with a story. Now, my husband is a pastor, but he's a former engineer. He doesn't start with stories. And so his approach was very odd. So I said, what is wrong? And he begins again with this story about my son, John. And I said, what happened? And he told me that he had shot himself. Something that I never thought would happen. John had struggled with mental illness all his life. He was 22 years old. We had been with him through his ups and his downs, but it was something I never thought that he would do, and I never thought God would allow. So that kind of propelled me into this whole grief and loss thing. So here I am in the midst of all these Christian counselors, everyone with their white, badges, and I fall to the ground and I'm just screaming. I'm screaming. And people are walking by me. The place is loud, and 2 women from that were also at the conference stopped. They helped me. They took me to their hotel room. And then people from the leadership of the American Association of Christian Counselors ministered to me. I mean, I had all these people praying for me. So of any place it's never good to lose a son, but I had a lot of support, a lot of comfort.
What a story.
Yeah. Of all the places to be, in fact, two of the people in my hotel room, one had worked with Hurricane Katrina, the Salvation Army effort, and the other one had been at 9/11. So I had two people that knew how to help people through grief and loss, and they really ministered to me, and we're still friends to this day.
Of course. That was a God moment, wasn't it? For both of those women, so gifted and so experienced, for them of all the people, 7,000 people.
Right. I knew at that moment that it was a God moment, that somehow I was there, not by mistake.
And you have, at that time, that was right in the time that you opened up your counseling office. Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, actually, I opened up my counseling practice within the next 6 months, which I don't even know how that happened, but you know.
Were you already on that trajectory?
I was working for a group practice, and then I thought, wait a minute, I could do this on my own. So I stepped out in faith, and God's been with me every step of the way.
I've experienced some tragedies of my own, and other people, I mean, everybody does. You live long enough, just a few years sometimes, and you're going to.
Absolutely.
And I don't make light of that at all. But I know that when I serve other people, some of my pain it doesn't transfer to them, but it dissipates, doesn't it?
Well, actually, counseling was pretty therapeutic to me. And it was interesting because after I lost my son and I was counseling, now I wasn't telling people what had happened to me, but I would get this comment, you get it.
Yes.
You get it. And I remember counseling a woman who had lost her mom, and it was like a year had gone by, and she came in for counseling. And I remember thinking, okay, in my mind, that's not what I said. It's been a year. Like, okay, I don't know where to go with this. But now I know.
Mm-hmm. But you, even though you counsel people, and your ministry, your message, your blog, your overarching message is about grief, that's not the whole picture.
No. And, before I lost my son, before I even got my counseling degree, I used to teach weekly Bible study. So I always want to ground every message that I give, whether it's speaking, blogging, with some type of scripture, because I really feel in the power of God's word is what's going to get us through some of these catastrophic things.
You say on your website that mental illness there can be an answer. It can, not always, but it can be healed. We don't have to assume because we or one of our loved ones has a diagnosis in that area that all is lost.
Right. There's a lot of help and hope. I think a good psychiatrist, therapist can really stabilize someone. For my son, what really gets difficult, Patricia, is that when he got to be a teenager, when more the bipolar was very much apparent, you can't make someone do anything at that age. You can't make them take medication. You can't make them go to counseling. And so that really becomes difficult when you have a child that you're working with, or even, a wife with a husband. They can't make their husband do anything. So that's the difficulty with mental illness. But a lot of people can live successful lives with mental illness.
I don't think that is discussed often enough. There just seems to be a pall that falls upon people, and they just sort of maybe even unintentionally just give up and just think, well, this is my lot in life forever. Can't do anything about it.
Right. And I think that's what my son believed. I think that he believed that bipolar was, that he was always going to be experiencing those lows, which are very, very low, which are very, very low.
Mm-mm-mm-mm. You say that part of the grief process often involves stuff. What does that mean, Dee?
You mean, are you referring to the blog on stuff? Oh gosh. Yeah, this is what I'm actually currently going through, is because when you lose somebody, they leave behind clothes, they leave behind toothbrushes, they leave behind school papers. And so I recently, and it's been, over 10 years, as we're decluttering our house, I'm going through some of additional things of John's stuff. And I realized that that it affected even the decorating of my house. I almost wanted to keep everything the same as when John was alive. It's weird. It's like a form of denial. And I've seen that with other people. I remember someone had called me and they wanted me to go and work with their mother, who they said was a hoarder. Well, I was young and optimistic, and they didn't have those reality shows at that time, so I really didn't know what I was getting into. And so I had a paper copy of the directions, and I'm going down the road. But even before I got to her house, it screamed at me, "This is the house." There were broken cars. There were shutters falling down. The door was off its hinges. There was debris. And this was an upscale neighborhood. And so when I went in, no one could have prepared me. The smell of mold. She could not throw out even a wrapper, like just that you might find when you open up a bread bag or something like that. And I tried to make it up the stairs. It was a 2-story house. And when I got to the one room, it was a nursery. And this woman had to have been in her 70s at that point. And so after her husband left her, I think that she just developed this hoarding. I wasn't that bad, but stuff and grief and loss, there's a connection there. There's an emotional connection.
You started your blog. Let's talk about your blog, and we're going to go to a little bit about the speaking, and then your writing. Then we'll get to that marketing element.
Perfect.
Your blog focuses on all of these topics. You started it in January of this year, if I'm looking at my information correctly.
Actually, April. In January, I fell and got a concussion, and so I wrote those blogs, but I didn't really start it till April.
Oh, okay.
So they have old dates on it, but yes.
Okay. I don't see well. I was beginning to wonder if I was misunderstanding those dates. And your very first one, you say that life brings to all of us unexpected losses. And it's so true. It's so true. We have a tendency, especially as some Christians do, and some Christians are taught that, if you just get on the Jesus bandwagon, life's going to be rosy from now on. And
if you just pray enough, I think that will happen, right? No.
Years ago, I heard a quote from Johnny Erickson Tata, who's immobilized in the wheelchair. And somebody suggested to her that if she had enough faith, that she could get out of the wheelchair. And I'm not 100%. This was credited to her, but it doesn't sound like her sweet spirit. But I'll just tell you, it was credited that she said that she hit him with a cane and said, if you had enough faith now, that wouldn't hurt you.
Okay.
That doesn't really ring true with me, but as far as her saying that, because her spirit is so gentle. But I do believe that if she did indeed say it, it was because she's such an advocate of people who say, don't.
Right.
You can live with what God has given you. It takes time to adjust to it.
Patricia, I did hear that story, but this is how I heard it that made more sense. Okay. Something John. She says, it takes more faith for me to sit and look at you and smile.
Oh, that's better.
Yes. that it's taken a lot of faith just for me to smile when you're telling me that if I had enough faith, I would be out of this wheelchair. Just her graciousness to this man took more faith.
That sounds like who she is. Yes.
She is. She's a great person.
I'm going to incorporate that story, that adjustment, because that's a lot better.
Yeah.
More fitting and more like her.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to use a cane and a wheelchair. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering where she got the cane. I couldn't figure that out. That was a long time ago. I didn't even question it. It's been so long ago. And you said that it's tempting to get stuck where we are. And you just mentioned the lady who was a hoarder.
Yes.
How do we get unstuck? How do we get out of that frozen state, Dee?
Well, I think just some knowledge on what the grief process looks like. And many of you have heard that grief has stages. It doesn't all look the same. The first stage typically is denial. I remember even when John died, just waking up several days and weeks afterwards, wondering, is this really true? It didn't seem real. And then we can move from the denial into anger. And we can get stuck in this anger. You can get angry at, I can get angry at people that didn't help John. I could get angry at, a doctor that didn't do what I felt maybe he could have done. I could get angry at this or at that. But I realize, or you can be angry at God. You can be angry at yourself, thinking that maybe I needed to do something different. Or, I have just an example, Patricia. I've got a lot of examples since I do a lot of counseling. I had this mother who came to me. She had lost her infant at about 8 months old. And the baby went into Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. So it's a great hospital. She was at the best place she could be. And what happened was they made some novice error and the baby died. It had nothing to do with with what the baby went in for. It had something to do with it was actually just a malpractice kind of thing. And I saw the mom 3 years later, and she was stuck in the anger at the hospital. And I thought, you know what? And she had to keep the story in mind because she was going to have to testify. And it just got her stuck in the grief because she just stayed in that never-ending circuit of anger. And so a lot of people, we can get derailed in different ways, or we could just, be angry at God. We could still go to church. We could still maybe even do the same ministries, but our heart isn't there.
Yes.
Or we could just stay depressed. If we don't allow grief, if we don't allow the tears to flow, we can end up with some depression. So grief looks different and as the stages go on, but we can get stuck if false messages kind of creep through. If we expect that, gosh, it took me years to really not feel the grief daily from John's death. And if I had believed the lie that in a year I'd be okay, or I wouldn't feel this, that could get me stuck.
Great points. And we need to, everybody knows this, but let's acknowledge it. We're talking about death, loss of employment, divorce, whatever the person deems as a catastrophic loss, right?
Right. It's usually something that overwhelms you, that hits you, maybe especially if it's unexpected.
Yes.
And it overwhelms your capacity to handle.
That's a great way to put that. You mentioned that there's the number one gift to give to a grieving friend is,
I would say, listening, just being there for the person. One of the scripture places that I would camp on, believe it or not, after my son died was Job, because I thought Job lost 10 of his kids, so he probably knows something that can help me out. And his friends were quiet for 1 week, and they brought him great comfort. And then they started talking, and they started telling him why this was happening. And sometimes as Christians, we want to explain things, or people will say, what can I say to someone? Well, really nothing. There's like no Bible verse, and I'm all for the Bible. There's no Bible verse. There's no little quote. There's no anything magic that's going to take this away. So the number one gift you can give is to be there with someone and to just listen. Let them talk. Don't judge. Don't cut them off. Don't hand them tissue so that they just clean themselves up with, but allow them to cry. Allow them just to feel the feelings.
I think that is great, excellent advice. And with your many roles, pastor's wife, mother, excuse me, counselor,
grandmother,
you must have had many times to support someone just with your physical presence. And the fact that with your physical presence comes your love and support, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Just being there for someone, just sitting there and allowing them the space to grieve, to cry, to feel those emotions is very healing.
I think that a lot of people are awkward with silence, but if you can become comfortable with it, or even if you can suspend the awkwardness while you're with the grieving person.
Right.
We don't have to fill the air. We don't have
to do anything. And that's the beauty of it, is people say, what should I do? What do I need to say? You don't. Just be there for the person. And there probably won't be silence. They may start talking. And, one of the things you can do is to ask them about whatever is the loss was. What was your son like? People that didn't know my son, I wanted them to talk about him. I wanted them to ask about him.
Yes. I'm going to list, I always do the resources mentioned in this episode after the episode airs. And I have Dee's website and Facebook page and so forth. And also an interesting quiz that she has on her blog, a simple quiz on grief. I believe that it will help you, and you might want to point other people to it. It's very interesting. It's not egregious. It won't take a lot of time. 10 items. And she has some insights there. I think it will be a real help to you. Now, you're also already inviting people to guest post on your blog who are in the same field. Is that right? So you're strengthening your offering without increasing your workload.
Right. I thought, well, this is really neat, because when I started my blog, I thought I was going to blog consistently. Tuesday morning is, B-day, blog day. Got to get that in. And then I thought, I have friends. That do grief and loss. In fact, this is a cool story. I went back to the American Association of Christian Counselors. The conference is every 2 years, so I went back. And so I'm sitting in Norm Wright, which he's an expert in grief and loss. I'm sitting at his pre-conference workshop. And I sit in the front row to the right. That's where I sit every conference, every workshop. I don't want to miss a thing. And so to the left of me was this woman. And so we introduced ourselves to each other. And it turns out we had a mutual friend. And actually tomorrow she will have lost her son 3 days after I lost my son. And her son was 6 years old. So I had her guest blog, because she is also, she has lost her mom, she lost her dad, she lost her 6-year-old son, and now she lost her husband.
Lord have mercy.
So the guest blogging, that's kind of a cool thing to do.
Have you yet approached other people for you to be a guest on their blog? Have you done that step yet, taken that?
I have not, but that's on my next type of thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about your speaking, and then we'll get right to your writing. Okay. You're ramping up your speaking as part of building your online platform, right? Is that what you told me?
Right. I got into counseling. I had been speaking, and then I got into counseling, and I didn't have time for speaking. And I just kind of left that at the wayside. And so then, I think a year and a half ago, the American Association, again, was doing their conference. And I felt it was such a God moment that I needed to go back and speak there at their workshop. So I just put in a little blurb, never thinking they would pick me, but they did. And so I did a workshop with a few other women on loss of a child. And again, they approached us. They approached actually me and my friend, the one that lost her son, and are asking us to do that again. And another opportunity came up, and I'm just taking the opportunities that come up, and I'm letting my clients know that I speak. So I put that on my business card, redid that. So I'm, putting myself out there and just taking baby steps, whatever God has, the next thing.
That sounds like a perfect plan to me. It's infallible, as a matter of fact. And you're already experienced at it, but anybody who has not yet, because of your pastoral wife role, but other people who are not as experienced as you were when you began, not speaking all those years ago, but applying it and representing your work and your ministry, they can still put themselves out there. They can add that to their email signature. They can put it on their business card. Right. Let people know that you don't have to hit anybody over the head.
Right. Well, that was a scary thing for me, but I just realized if God's given me this message, I need to let people know. And the Bruce Wilkinson book on Prayer of Jabez, I read that, prayed that, got involved, Patricia, in a year-long mentoring group where we began to talk about writers, speakers, that kind of thing. I had no idea. I didn't know this whole world was out there on how you even go about doing these things. Got a hold of the Christian Writers Guide, never knew that existed, started flipping through it, and saw that in Pennsylvania that Marlene Bagnall did a critique group. So I thought, okay, I'll email her. She won't let me come, but that's what I was thinking. Maybe I need, because it said experienced writers. And I thought, I'm just a wannabe. But she said, come on. And so then when you get to know Marlene, you get to be involved in her conferences.
Yep.
And so then I began to learn more about this whole platform thing, which I had no idea what that was. And so these are just some of the initial beginning steps that I took. And one thing led to another. And then when I realized I needed a platform, I thought, well, I need to redo my SAD website, because my website was old. It was for counseling. It was not great. So I hired someone to do my website because that was beyond my skill set. And he did a great job. And then I thought, okay, so what's going to be on this website? I need to blog. So I picked up Mike Hyatt's book on platform and just kind of followed his steps. He said, blog consistently. So I blog weekly. Talked about the guest blogging, linking to other things. He also talked about staying in your lane. So instead of talking about a lot of topics, which I could talk about a lot of topics, I counsel a lot of different issues. I primarily am talking about grief and loss issues. And again, always having one scriptural principle in there. And then my blog host person got me involved with Google Analytics. And that's a real fun thing. That is a real fun thing. I used to be in marketing. My first life, I was a marketing major before I got my degree in counseling. And so he set this Google Analytics up. I tell you, Google knows everything about you. I could, I have a few friends in a few different states, so I can tell how many minutes they're reading my posts. It tells you how many minutes, what states, the breakdown, who's on your site. I have actually more male readers on my blog than I do female readers. So that's just kind of interesting. So I'm tracking that. I'm seeing that readership is going up. People are coming back to this blog. So that's kind of what I'm doing, Patricia.
I want to say that those are basic things on one level, but they're advanced in the other. You flip that and they're advanced because you are doing things. You are doing the things that professionals do. And the Google Analytics, that result about more men reading your blog, I think that's a very important piece of information. Do you yet know what to do with that?
No.
You will.
I store it in my mind is what I do. Yeah. And, I don't know what to do with it. Part of that is if I'm going to write a book, which I started, I think I have about 7 chapters, but they say when you write a nonfiction book, don't write the whole book. Write part of the book, get an agent, and then an agent hopefully finds you a publisher. Mm-hmm. And so part of what I'm doing with the blogging is seeing what blog posts gain traction, what is feedback, what feedback people are giving to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's falling right in line with what you're saying. Some are doing that, giving you feedback on your website. Some unknowingly giving you feedback on Google Analytics. This is the master plan here. We just don't toss out our message and hope for the best. That's not wrong, but we could do the same amount of work, add a little bit of information, measuring information, start tracking data, and we begin to see revelations that we would have never guessed were in place. And you're experiencing that.
I am. A lot of people don't comment right at my blog, but they're emailing me or they're telling me in person. Yes. And they're encouraging me. So it's been fun. I just feel like as I go one step at a time, that God's going to lead me.
Yes.
I think a lot of times we can get overwhelmed with the whole platform and we can, cuss under our breath about it. But I think it's just the reality is that I don't want to write a book that no one's going to read or one person's going to read. And I know you hear, even if one person is helped, well, I'm counseling families at a time. So I am doing the one person. I want to reach more than one person.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there's every reason to believe that that's what God wants too. He's the one that put all this in your heart, gave you the training. You've experienced the path yourself. You're primed and ready. You're just needing to build that online platform. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple of questions on Facebook. I've been monitoring it. Cindy Reynolds would like to know who did your website. So if you'll give me that information after the program, I'll add that in the resources list.
Perfect.
Mm. And Joyce Kaiser says, you do so well, Dee. Just what she expected.
Yeah, good friend.
Jeannie Cagle Waters give us as a heart sign. And I mentioned Janice already that she has said, Janice has, Janice Hallheck, she's greeted us early on. And she says now, so sorry for your loss, Dee. I'm thankful for your courage to share your insights about grieving on your blog and book. People seem reluctant to bring up the name of the deceased person, fearing it might cause more emotional pain, but the opposite is true. We suffer more emotional pain when the deceased person's name is never mentioned. I found that to be the case as well.
Absolutely.
They're still real to you, aren't they?
Yes, they're still here. I mean, yes. They're not here, but I have 4 children. I don't have 3 children.
Yes. Oh, perfectly said. And you had mentioned even that some of the people who have heard you speak say that you touched them so deeply, and that that they see their life from a different perspective now. So those are fine testimonials, Dee. Good for you and good for your audience.
Well, I think the difference when I was counseling before I lost my son, after I lost my son, I was getting these comments like, "You get it." I didn't tell them what my pain was, but they knew I understood their pain, because the comfort God gives us, He wants us to comfort others in any situation. So it doesn't have to be the same thing that we can comfort other people, but people sense that I'm coming from a sincere, deeper place.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. So let's talk just a little bit more. You mentioned a couple of things, 6 ways beginners can start building their platform, and you mentioned some of them already. You read the Michael Hyatt book. You didn't mention yet, but you got hooked up. The Lord gave you a mentor. You did mention that, the year-long mentor program.
Yes, that's what I did initially. Mm-hmm.
And then you got hooked up with Marlene, and life changes, doesn't it?
Yes. Marlene, just, do this, Dee, do that, Dee. Okay.
Her heart is big as the world. She's here to serve writers, Christian writers, and she does that with excellence. You started the blog. You joined the Writers Critique Group. Can you give us a very quick overview of how that critique group has helped you? Because a lot of people are really intimidated by the simple phrase critique group.
Well, it is kind of scary. It's in Marlene's home. She's very, very welcoming. It's the first time I actually put myself out there and would bring a little bit of what you're reading. They help me. They help me to see things that I might not have seen, because we aren't always our best judge of something. Because if we're writing for other people, we need to know how it's impacting other people. And now I'm not always able to go to the critique group because I had a fall and I suffered a concussion. That's a whole long story. But driving at night isn't the best thing, and Marlene's a little bit of a distance. But now I'm getting that feedback from my blogging, what different people who are reading it are telling me. But you always need feedback. I don't think you want to write something, put a lot of time and effort to write something if you could just tweak it in a little bit different direction, and that could minister to more people.
Great point. And viewers, if you're even possibly considering looking at critique groups, just go to the Google machine. Look at, put in your location, your city, your state, find a local critique group. You could go to one. If you don't like it, you don't have to go back.
I always tell people to do something twice, because the first time you feel awkward, but just do it twice. I looked at the Christian Writers Market Guide, and you can look under your state, and they'll give some critique groups. Yes.
Christian Writers Market Guide, and that's available everywhere, Amazon, all kinds of places, and it's very helpful. Tons of information. It's crazy how much.
Right.
You also are actively commenting on other people's blogs. That's another way for you to get connected.
What I'm doing. Yeah.
And let's see, I think that's everything. Is that everything? Mentored. So let me run through the list. 6 ways. Mentored by a professional Christian writer and speaker. Joined a critique group. We have a few bonus ones too. You started a consistent / focused blog. Yeah. You invited others in the same field to guest post on your blog. And then you're going to other people's blogs and commenting yourself there. All good. Very, very solid marketing approaches. Installed, well, you didn't install it, but you have the benefit of Google Analytics being installed and reaping the rewards of all of that knowledge.
Right.
Let's run through just a couple more. She read the book of Jabez, which has been years since I've read that. It's so wonderful. So let's dust that off and read that again. Read also Michael Hyatt's book, Platform, Getting Noticed in a Noisy World, I believe is the subtitle. And you increased your speaking. You made yourself more available. You were letting people know that you were available, and then God did the rest of the work, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. And now you've got the title for the book, but you also named a blog gave a blog that title. Do you think you're going to stick to that? And are you prepared to reveal the tentative title?
When doing right turns out wrong, finding hope and healing after loss. I kind of like that title because part of my story is I gave my all to mothering. And no, I didn't do it right. There's no right, but I put God first. John knew the Lord. So when I think there's a different type of a loss that you experience when you feel like you are going on the path that God led you on. And I think of a woman who married the guy that she felt God wanted her to marry. And now, let's just say things aren't well. And you can feel that God let you down, that something let you down because you felt like you were doing the right thing and it turned out wrong. So I like the title, but I want to see if that holds traction for other people also.
I like the title myself, and even if you change it, it's a great beginning, isn't it? That can be your foundation, and if you'll be able to judge, you're not just flotsam and jetsam out there tossing around a lot of ideas, talking about gardening and retirement, and grief and loss is somewhere packaged in the mix. You've got to focus.
That's all. Yeah, that's what I'm focusing on. And you know what? By faith, God gives me something every week to say, because when I started, I had maybe 4 blogs, 4 posts that I had in my hopper. And then after that, I had nothing to say. But, so, this is all a step of faith. You don't always start with the whole plan. And so you just kind of trust God to just give you things to say.
And if he's called you to do it, he will help you do it.
Right.
We know that in some areas of our life, but we forget to apply that same truth that's so firmly entrenched in us in some other areas, don't we?
Yes.
Let me check Facebook one more time. Jeannie Cagle says, Marlene Bagnall's devotion to writers is amazing. Absolutely. She includes writing tips and our walk with Christ, her devotional. Let me back up. Marlene's devotional for writers is amazing. She includes writing tips and our walk with Christ. Jeannie also says, thank you, Dee, for honestly sharing your writing journey. This process helps all of us. One step at a time is the best advice. Absolutely. And Cindy, we will be adding the answer to your question. The website designer will add that after the episode airs. Just give me a minute to collect that and I'll swoop it all up there.
Gotcha.
Thank you very much for telling us about what's going on in your life and your work and your ministry. And the enemy tells us if we haven't got every single thing in place immediately, overnight, that we're never going to arrive. And you know better, don't you?
On some days I do, but I still have to counsel myself like, Dee, come on, it's by faith. Because sometimes you discouragement can come and often does come. Like, who do you think you are that you think you're going to be doing this? And you have to refute that because that's the voice of the enemy. If you don't realize that this whole thing is a spiritual battle, you'll fall. You won't lift your head up again.
That is a great, great point to end on. I feel so strongly and agree with everything that you just said. We can't do God's work and not expect to be attacked by the enemy of God, right?
Absolutely.
We don't have to like it. We don't have to welcome it, but we shouldn't be surprised by it. We can turn and ask Christ to protect us or teach us how to protect ourselves, set better boundaries. I would imagine that you are an excellent boundary setter with your professional background, are you?
It's a work in progress. I teach it every day, and God teaches me every day. So it's a journey.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We so appreciate it. You've been very helpful. You've ministered to several people here live. You will to other people watching the replay. It's been a joy to hear what you had to say this morning. It's actually not morning anymore. Viewers, we thank you for being with us, for watching, for asking questions, letting us know that Dee has ministered to you and has motivated you to go to the next step. Be faithful to Christ. He will be faithful to you. He does not expect perfection, and I'm so very glad, or none of us would get out of bed in the morning. This has been Marketers on a Mission, episode number 130, 6 Ways Beginners Can Start Building Their Platform, with guest writer Dee Lundgren. We have more tutorials and interviews planned for you in the next 2 weeks, and then in the first full week of October, we're going to honor Breast Cancer Awareness Week at this on this program. 5 Christian authors, each of whose lives have been changed by breast cancer, will share their stories of faith and hope. More on that in the coming weeks. You know, we're here every weekday at 12 Pacific, 3 Eastern for you. This program is designed to help you learn the craft of writing from professional writers and how to market that message online, because your audience is online. Until next Monday, thank you, Dee, again. Dee and I thank you, viewers, for being with us. Hope you have a good weekend, and let's again remember Hurricane Florence victims. Thanks very much for being here.